Hello again. This is Vincentas from IPXO, and we are yet on another webinar. And this time it's with Zach Smith, the co-founder and CEO at Datum, our true partner. Hey, Zach.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good, good. So today I'm actually streaming live from Germany because I'm on the way to CloudFest, and Zach is in New York.
Where it is finally sunny and not snowing.
There you go. There you go. Hey, Zach, tell me, so what Datum is cooking?
So let me just tell you a little bit about me. I live in New York City. For those of you that don't know, my name's Zach Smith. I've been tinkering in and around internet infrastructure for about, I guess I counted it up. It's 26 years now. So a quarter century, which just seems pretty crazy. And most recently started a business called Datum. I work with my twin brother and a couple other great people. And we're trying to build the internet for AI. That's a big tagline, but what does it actually mean? We believe that there's a lot more complexity, that the architecture has changed around delivering AI applications and just the way that software is built, or I was going to say how humans build software, but that's probably a little outdated. But the way software is built and deployed, the demands of the next wave of the internet are pretty different than the last 30 years, from my experience. And so what Datum's doing is basically building a series of primitives, the edge capability to terminate connections, to curate and manage virtual backbones, and upgrade the Meet Me room that has happened in physical data centers for the past 30 or 40 years to a world that can deal with clouds. So that's what we're doing, helping service providers. And our mission would be 1,000 new cloud providers could win and succeed with the superpowers of the big old internet.
Awesome. That sounds very exciting.
Well, for
And
those of us who have been building in the internet, I think it's pretty exciting, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
many of us have seen, a huge consolidation in how the internet works, and who controls which parts. But I know when you got into the business, and certainly when I did, it was very, I was going to say, provincial. You went down
Yeah.
to your local ISP or maybe a colo provider who ran one
All
building.
manual.
Yeah, and you met with the guy who ran the router, and then he loaned you a port, and then it was very accessible in a way. And over the past 2 decades, we've scaled the heck out of the internet, consolidated where it used to be selling a quarter rack at a colo was totally normal business. And I think most data center businesses out there would laugh at you if you asked for anything less than a couple megawatts these
Mhm.
days. So it's just a really different world. And so to see, the ability to take some of those primitives that really empowered the first wave of the internet for me, and I think a lot of us who have, benefited from the connecting of the whole world, to be able to transition some of those superpowers and tools and capabilities to a new wave of builders, I think is really exciting. It's actually, we need opportunities to feel hopeful and ways that we can contribute to society with technology. And for me, this feels like a good way to do it.
And it feels like that. Let's put it this way: a new hosting environment becomes a new type of software. Because instead of saying that, "Hey, I got my bare metal," I got my environment.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it's very exciting opportunity, and the things are definitely shaping in hosting industry, in the whole infrastructure layer. And I think that we definitely gonna see um, not some sort of raw hardware
Mm.
that was value back 10 years ago, but we're gonna see the environments and the specified environments, what you can do with them will gonna be that value. So coming back to our main topic, by the way, So is open source dead?
Mic drop. Well, let me talk a little bit about, I mean, in one way, absolutely not. This is kind of the golden age of open and permissive software. I think if any of you have used, Claude Code and, Opus 4.6, you understand how powerful open source software has become. That model for creating software is so good because it is so well trained on open systems.
Mm-hmm.
Linux basically, and other open source languages that are so well documented and so well understood that you could build high specialty models. So I think that like in one way, this is the time for openness. In another way, the business model in general, which had a fleeting 10 years of success around open source having a SaaS model, which I can kind of like, I'd love to talk through this. The really big shift here is like, yeah, we have a monetization issue when I don't ever just think it's with open source software. Proprietary software is just as at risk. And so proprietary software businesses, I think, are very, very fragile right now when, you know, Claude code can be as good as a great 10x senior engineer. Is your moat of I built this better software or this more features really a moat? And the answer is like, no, probably not, right? And something that a friend of mine told me a couple months really stuck with me. We're talking about early stage companies and how people would get funded and what was their advantage, startups, right? I've been a part of big companies and small companies. And the great thing about small companies is that you can move faster. You don't have the burdens of,
Yeah.
1,000 people to convince because the process
Internal
always works like
policies
this.
and stuff.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
You don't have that. So you get to say, hey, I see how it should be done. So I can go build that. And for I would say like 2000s, maybe in the late 90s through the 2010, the main competitive advantage of most startups that got backed by, VCs, if you go look up like Battery Ventures Index or Bessemer's Index of, quartiles of performance for startups, seed and series A, the vast majority of them during that time were just software companies. They were, we can write software versus just consume software, because the
Mm-hmm.
vast majority of enterprises were just consuming software. I buy my SAP or I buy my PeopleSoft and then I run my business. And there was a whole new class of companies who are like, we're going to use like open source and we're going to build software. We're going to make software better than almost anybody else. Okay, so like that was the competitive advantage, was I can make software. And then that kind of like got normalized, and the competitive advantage of like the 2010s was I can run software. It's called SaaS. I'll just
Mm-hmm.
make it go. I'll host it. I'll update it. I'll provide continuous dopamine hits via features. And you don't have to worry about all that operational stuff because I'm really good at DevOps and cloud and running things and yada, yada, yadas and software release cycles. And so this kind of like SaaS ecosystem, which is really what got funded for the 15 years, was just, hey, I can do as a service software. And I would say both of those moats are basically gone. Everybody can write software. In fact, all companies can write software. Even individual people can write good software. And now running SaaS is not that hard. You can use a front end, a back end, a bunch of cloud services, and as
Lots
a
of
small team,
frameworks. I've
yeah,
heard.
you can be like running a super high available, works all the time, update. It's a mature muscle. And so that's no longer really a moat. So the question would be, what's the moat? Like, what's the thing? And I personally think it's kind of got to be a little bit different business model. It's got to be ecosystem, or maybe it's got to be distribution somehow. But this leads me back to our
What do
main
you mean
question.
about distribution? Let's come back a little. What do you
Yeah.
mean about distribution?
I mean, who wins? Like a software startup would usually win because they could be 1 to 2 years ahead of the slow corporation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would go get the mind share. Like Adobe is sitting there counting its subscription dollars and
Mm-hmm.
forgets to build Figma.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, I'm sure they talked about it. They're like, we should, but like we got all this money coming in from the other thing. And so in comes the Figma, and decimates and starts slurping up the users. And suddenly the market has changed because people are like, wait, I don't really want this. Or maybe it's Canva. I don't know. And
Mhm.
then in comes the, AI tools that just, Gemini image generator or whatever. I don't know. But I think that, you know, big companies have traditionally had distribution. Adobe should be in that business. I would say Adobe now, although it has a lot of challenges, probably because it's going through a big, you know, existential who's my customer quest right now, but it has the customer and the brand and the reach, the partnerships, all the distribution. So if it can
Mhm.
go create Canva copy number two or Figma competitor number whatever, because it can write software faster, that is no longer the mode. So like I believe that speed of innovation, speed of software development is no longer good enough. So either you have to have, for example, like we've seen some AI businesses happen recently that had really good distribution. Like, for example, I am the only one who has the NVIDIA chips. You know,
But this
I,
is
you know,
this is like a supply type of thing, shortage, like IPv4 addresses,
right. There's not a lot of them, and I have
sort
some
of.
of them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Hmm.
I agree. And so I think that this is like maybe a thin value prop, but finding your distribution, maybe it's working with different partners, maybe it's arms dealing to an ecosystem that wouldn't traditionally have that. In our world, maybe it's partnering with carriers, people who have customers and eyeballs and things. You have to have a different model because I think the old way of just like I can write software faster is not going to be sufficient. It might be good for a little bit, but I think it's going to get eroded pretty quickly. And
But
this has
yeah.
always been the problem with open source, which has mainly
Hmm.
been about distribution, right? Which is like, I can find my market before I have to go buy my go to market. And so open source companies have really been able to hit their product fit. Their monetization path was usually like, well, then I'll host it for you. And
Hmm.
so I think that is a thinner prop right now than it used to be.
So, talking about open source as the advantage
Mm,
because you can bring more community on board to ship that code faster. Is
mm.
that really a case?
I mean, I think it traditionally has been a theory. I think very few projects have ever really realized high value contributor from their community. It's usually either a company or a core set of contributors doing almost everything and the vast majority of other people consuming, right? If you look at the distribution graphs on commits, right, you don't have thousands of people in most open source projects committing. You have dozens, right? And the vast majority are done by the few maintainers, but you do get product feedback and fit. You get adoption before you have to go and do the expensive go to market, being like, hey, Mr. or Mrs., would you like to buy this thing? You've never heard of it. You go to people who are like, I'm already using the thing. In fact, I've been using it for 3 years through 17 different versions.
It's a
Um,
WordPress case. It's a WordPress case.
yeah,
Like everyone's used to use WordPress for their websites, for their blogs, for everything, and how the actual WordPress would be able
makes
to
money.
monetize, that thing. But everyone's using it, and everyone's customizing it.
Yeah, and that's an ecosystem play because you've got all the plugin ecosystems that are there.
Hmm.
So everybody's adding to it and wanting to do more. I'd say other ecosystem business that are not open source that probably benefited even more were like Shopify. It's like, make money here. We made it better to spin up a store. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry about all that
Yep.
SaaS and hosting and whatever, but you can make money in our plugin ecosystem and your apps, and we'll handle the money and we'll pay you. And they're even more of a marketplace driven model. I think like Automatic and WordPress is an excellent case study as somebody who started as an open source company before hosting and SaaS was real, then got in and competed with their ecosystem, to basically WordPress hosting and plugins that they would own proprietary and then changing licensing, debates. So I think like, they've evolved because they had such a big wide distribution network. But I think, if you were to start that again right now, would it work? I don't know.
The times are changing, and I think that rewinding the things what you previously said about that AI kind of impacted the things a lot. Um, don't you think that the AI made a solo open sourcers the actual developers? Because what we are trying to do is basically run as many agents as possible simultaneously so that we could ship the code faster. But it's not
Mhm.
necessary that if you would have the second developer running the same code, that would be as fast as you would do this alone. And my point is here that perhaps the open source type of thing will become sort of how well you write the prompts, or how well you can construct the actual design of the product. And you don't need any open source and you don't need any community, because, well, you can do the things alone as 10 developers or 10x developer.
It's so interesting because one of the things I was thinking about, I'm pretty committed to open source, so huge bias coming out right there. Because I've benefited so much from open source. I think our world benefits from things being open. And the free software kind of concept, I think, is really powerful. Um, but like I've been thinking about with Datum, like, what do I do? Do I support maintainers? Do I just, give $100 a month to this maintainer or that maintainer? I've been thinking about like maybe I just need to provide token budgets so I can create open source maintainer agents, coding agents that just can go do this 24 hours a day and just be like, I'll give you a $200, coding budget through token capacity with Opus 4.7 or whatever comes out. And like, we'll put it on these 10 projects and just burn it up, right? Like
Hmm.
improving and like let the maintainer just review PRs instead of trying
Hmm.
to solicit community members, which frankly, community members are kind of hard. They get busy, they have other jobs, they
Hmm.
get bored. I'm not saying
Yep.
it's a replacement, but it actually might be a net benefit for open software projects that currently lack maintainers or people who can review PRs or, just not enough velocity. And so maybe there's actually a benefit here for open projects that have governance that can support that, but need more work hours because work hours are going to be just money, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, then you talk about the actual projects that we saw as the open source, and then they actually shifted to be a paid
Yep.
type of like
Like change their license model.
yeah, we saw Red Hat is doing that, Redis, MongoDB, you name it. Yeah, lots of examples. Yeah.
Sure.
So is
Elastic. They all did it.
yeah, exactly. So is it not betrayal model, mm, for like getting the community as the maintainers, getting it for free, and then starting to license it?
I mean, I think a lot of companies, especially like in that database layer, think MongoDB, think Elastic, right? And now most recently, like with Minio, they built their whole business off of like distribution through open source, and then we're going to have some kind of like enterprise license slash support thing. They were born pre SaaS,
Mm-hmm.
and then in comes SaaS, and it's like we're going to get all the value capture not through support, but we're going to get it by running it. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we don't want is we don't want people competing with that. We don't want Amazon also running all this MongoDB stuff and straight up competing with us because probably Amazon's going to be like at scale operator and take
Mm-hmm.
all of our great open source software and run it, there. And I know the Grafana guys dealt with this. I know that like my friends over at Netbox, have this kind of opportunity problem right
Yeah.
now. And so I think folks who started as a super permissive license, Apache, MIT, and then basically SaaS came around and everybody just wanted it as a service. They had to adjust their business. And I'm not so sure that that was completely hoodwinked, and they didn't like mean to screw their community. They just kind of like the market changed and they had to start delivering as a service. And that meant they needed a different protection model with their license, because there wasn't going to be any way just through copyright alone that they could kind of maintain their community and their edge. So
Mhm.
I have some empathy there, right? The area where I'm really not sympathizing, I just switched my adjectives here, um, is companies who are born in the age of SaaS and
Mhm.
decided to like do both. They're like, let me go and get the community to adopt. I want to go wide, and then I'm going to like monetize with SaaS, but also I'm going to eventually change my licensing. And I think like that's not very awesome, right? I know that Minio and I love AB and what they've created, but man, this doesn't feel very good for like, they could have become a cloud storage company.
Mhm.
And then instead they basically, changed their license on it. I get it, right? I understand, but like I think that's pretty tough. So I think what's going to be interesting is the companies being born right now. You know, do you think your proprietary software model is that protected? I'd be curious.
Mhm.
Um, or if you do lean into open source, what license model do you choose? Right?
Mhm.
Because how are you going to monetize? I was talking to Chris over at Netbox, and we're talking about the plugin ecosystem. It's like a WordPress play. It's like all of the different parts of Netbox to track deployments and devices, and all the metadata is actually the valuable part. It's the community like core plugin. Like the software itself is just like, I mean, it's really needed, but like, is hosting Netbox like worth X? I don't know. Like, probably the proprietary data sources and keeping the whole community together is worth it. But like this, is the software being written or the software being hosted worth that? I don't know. That's pretty tough. So I think that's like new companies right now being born have to think about that.
Mhm. And I think that, we definitely should learn the mistakes the other companies did. Like, again, coming back to Red Hat,
Mm,
they have that self storage thing, yeah.
mm-hmm.
And when you think about this elephant, that self storage, it's an elephant. But, like, for example, us in our previous life, we've been running Ceph.
A
We've
lot.
been, I mean, it's a huge commitment to run Ceph. Let's
Mm-hmm.
put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But, what I'm actually seeing, looking at Red Hat owning that Ceph open source and enterprise Ceph, yeah, it feels like that they lose the grip about who's actually their customer is.
Mm.
Because sure, the enterprise, you gonna have, S&P 500 companies, large enterprises that, pay you millions for those licenses, right?
Yeah. What are
But
they
on
paying you
the,
for? They're
huh?
paying you for 0-day fixes, and because they
Yeah,
don't have
exactly.
anybody like who can
Sure,
commit and make changes, right? Like I'm
sure.
guessing that's what they're paying you for, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. We've been the open source users for some time until
Yep.
we hit some known bug that wasn't fixed, and our storage basically degraded to 20%.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you
Guess what
paid.
happened? Guess what happened? Guess what happened? On Sunday, we are reaching out to Red Hat
Of course you
enterprise
are.
sales team
Yeah. You're like
from
ink tank
Sweden. And
license. I
we
must
say,
have the ink tank.
we are ready to pay enterprise license. Just fix that bug.
But could I have the enterprise license only for today? No, just kidding.
Yeah. So guess what? Yeah, we buy that license, and we expect that, now we're gonna have a full attention to the things that we need to be fixed. Guess what? Nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. And then this is where I'm coming from. That you have those small providers that use open source.
Mm.
Fingers crossed we will not hit any known bugs or
Right. I
unknown
just
bugs.
apt update or get pull request like every time they hit main version, and thank you. It should be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you have those S&P 500, where we have full attention to. So the question to you, is this not a mistake, giving that, you have two different customer base
Mm,
using the same product,
mm.
basically? You know what I mean?
I mean, certainly they're very divergent users, right? And you need to know who's your target. And I've been through this because I've recently started Datum as an open source business. Why did I do it? Number one, I didn't think anything we would possibly create would be so protected in a proprietary standpoint. But so I went open because I thought
Mhm.
I better use open to earn trust with my customers, not to sell them paid versions of my software. We can get to that in a minute. But I also had to really understand who my customer was, because I agree, like trying on one hand to deal with some enterprise who's looking for some insurance plan,
Mhm.
and some like do DIY, but only when there's a problem, or like A, B, and C. I want to do, I'll have some economic, like very different value proposition of pricing, of value, of what you expect from it, et cetera. And so what I did with Datum is understand that our customer is going to be a service provider. And service providers don't love to pay you for operational software. They're going to be scaled. And so, what they will pay you for, in my opinion, is acceleration. They'll pay you for operations, they'll pay you for service, but they're not going to pay you very much for software, because if it's core to what they do, they're eventually, like probably like in your scenario, right? You're going to have to gain core competency to maintain it yourself, or you're going to have to like build it yourself. I don't know. Like it's really hard to rely upon a vendor for some key part of your software stack, because your
No.
use case is very different than almost any other. You're not like, oh, I just need it internally. You're like, no, I have 1,000 customers relying upon this. I
Mhm.
can't tell them that my vendor had a bug and they couldn't fix it. They don't care. But you in an enterprise, like you're like, dude, we have a vendor and they messed up. They're like, fire the vendor. But
The other thing about open source, do really, businesses should rely on open source as the business critical, component. And let me give you the other example from my life. We've been
tell me
using,
about your life, Vincentas. I want to know all the problems of your life.
yeah, sit down,
But as it has
relax,
to
and
do with
enjoy
open
the
source software,
story.
please.
No, but we had this um, server control panel orchestration, where it was absolutely free. We've been customizing everything, and the day came when we basically shifted the whole roadmap, and we basically were not able to do the updates anymore,
Mm.
because that fork that we had
Was
is
no
basically
longer
dead end.
mainline. Yeah.
Dead
You,
end.
yeah,
That's it.
you couldn't rebase to trunk
Yeah.
and keep going.
Yeah, and that's the thing, so um when you actually see the open source developing, and you rely that this open source will gonna be alive, and you expect that it would meet your roadmap the same way, that product will get developed, is it false to think about
Mm.
that you should rely on open source as a business critical component in your business?
I mean, I think in some cases you have to, but then you better get involved. Like either you're getting on the, finding out what the kind of organizing structure, what the governance is like, getting yourself on the steering committee, joining the foundation that it exists within. Like, I don't think you could, just like governments, you can't be like, I don't participate in my government, but when there's a problem, I want the government here for me, right? Just please always work. I
But
think
many.
you got to be participatory. So it means like you got to use software that supports your values, that you can participate in the governance.
Mhm.
Otherwise, yeah, it's free, it's open source, but it's not really, there's no like involvement that you can have. That's pretty dangerous, right?
But many, many would think, hey, do I really need to play with politics? I want to scale my business. What then?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think people join Linux Foundation and use their kind of common governance model and support this and say like, hey, we want IP protection and governance around a key set of projects, and that's what we're going to rely upon because I can't be in 17 different projects. I got to like go one to one, and we have a big conference, and I can go see the people and build relations and influence the roadmap,
Mhm.
but I can't do that against 100 projects. Um, so I think like that's an area where either through an organization like Linux Foundation, Apache, et cetera, you can have some structure to how to do that. Or you got to like lean in with one like corporate backed one, and kind of like appreciate their licensing model and how you can influence them through other ways. That's kind of where I'm really curious is that I believe Linux Foundation and have had a lot of success working through, the CNCF with Kubernetes, with different networking side like LF Edge, through a project that I helped host there, which was an open standards around hardware. Um, the sustainability initiative is really amazing, but
Mhm.
like commercial companies really don't work well in Linux Foundation, right? Because they take over the community and they want to have the community. So if you're Grafana, you're not part of the CNCF because you have a business that says, I want the Grafana community. I want to own the trademark and brand. I need to own that because that's my business model. And I think there's an issue with the Linux Foundation for commercial SaaS companies of the new
Mhm.
wave who are open source can't afford their own big ecosystem, can't put on Grafana for 10,000 people. Well, what do? Right? Like you either join an organization like LF, but then you give up your commercial ecosystem pretty much. Or you have to get really big and somehow start building your own ecosystem. I think there's an in between I'd love to explore for open source.
And that's the thing, your last sentence, or you have to become very big. This is where a tricky part is. You run a beautiful open source project, but actually, some hyperscaler is interested in,
Yeah,
and they join your committee, they
yeah,
join
sure.
your board or whatever,
Right.
and they started to dictate the things the way they want.
Yeah.
What then?
I mean, you have to have a governance model that kind of allows for even weight, right?
Okay, so here's the thing, guys. As per Zach's advice, don't start any open source project if you don't have good lawyers to get you a good structure, a governance structure.
Yeah, or some sort of experience in governance structure because it's going to get weird, right? I mean, in the end, the people who are going to do the work are going to do the work, but I
Mhm.
think you have to have a structure that's set up that's honest with your community and is also supporting. If you want to get the benefit of your users to come in and help you,
Mhm.
then you can't just like it's not just easy. You gotta deal with the complications that come with like hey, like
Mhm.
we're committing half the code because we're AWS and this is really important to us. And, you know, we expect to have our voice heard. Like I want commit access. We want to approve pull requests. Like that's a tension, right? You could certainly say, hey, like we're not targeting hyperscale users. We're targeting the normal Joes, right? And like that's where I've been really interested in is like where can we have a more sustainable, ecosystem of providers? I call
Hmm.
them alt clouds
Yeah.
that we get to work on open software together where we have kind of common goals, but it's not a winner take all, thing. And that's like I grew up, in the early days of web hosting where I love with Raj, we were building Voxel. And one of my favorite things was to actually go to hosting con and hang out with our competitors.
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
were not, we were not like, oh, you must die for me to win. It was kind of like, the market's rising. We're all doing the work. You're in this market. I'm in that market. I do this well. You do that well. But we should all work on peering together. What do you think?
Hmm.
Right? Or
Hmm.
like, hey, we should work on this open source RRD tool to do like our bandwidth graphs because, like, oh man, that sucks. Right?
Hmm.
And I think that that's the areas where we could use to improve, where there's a whole lot of, software that needs to be built and maintained, but it's niche. It's not, a huge business, but it is a necessary thing. We want, like, I've been spending some time with Prosimo, the memory safe organization that does Let's Encrypt, and they do Russell's, which is like a TLS library replacement memory safe. They do Hickory DNS. They do, a shell. Like basically, they are funded through that. But like when you go down to the projects, there's like one or two maintainers. That's it. Cause it's like very small project. Russell's
Hmm.
is not huge, but it's really important. Right. It's the memory safe replacement for libSSL. This is used everywhere. And so how do you build a big business? No, you need to have some sort of a tent. And so I love the idea of these more business and niche, like what Prosimo did. I think it came out of Mozilla, but it was
Yeah.
like, let's build memory safe, open source, fundamental tools for the safety of the internet. There are like 8
Let's
projects in there.
Encrypt. Yeah, actually, I agree with you. Let's Encrypt is a wonderful example of open source, like top notch. And I think they did a tremendous job on spinning this out, like
Yeah.
truly.
Yep.
Zach,
Yes.
so tell us what's the secret sauce of Datum? Now you actually say that, oh, we're gonna do everything open source, the world is beautiful,
Roses and
sunny,
ponies and rainbows, baby.
yeah, rainbows everywhere, Fine, sure. Love, peace, and unity. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, so how you gonna monetize it?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, so about that. Well, I think a couple things. Number one is we are open source, but we're not
Open
super
source.
permissive. It's AGPL v3, right? And so,
Mhm.
my goal is to build a community. I don't plan to sell. I don't want to monetize my software in like direct, like please pay me for licensing. That's not the goal. But we do want to keep a community because we think it's better together. Right? I don't want to have forks and fragments and whatnot. I prefer to have like build a community that cares about these fundamental things, and we can work on it together. Mainly, we'll do most of the work. Some people might have some other, time, energy input to do as well. Okay, so that's kind of first thing, which is not hyper permissive, but I've been very clear about that from the front. I think my very first or second blog post on our announcing our company was about our model here. And so I think that's my goal, right? And very clearly how we want to make money. And then I'll tell you what comes to our secret sauce is, we're arms dealing picks and shovels in the running of the internet. And we believe that with our software being trusted and used in lots of places, that there are enough places where we can be the service provider and deliver the aggregation, the bits, the transit, the transport, the runtime, the infrastructure that allows people to build their own edge network, to build their own, platform using our software. We will have value to give in that aggregation or as a provider. And I certainly hope to earn the trust of our target customer in order to do that. Why? Because I think it makes economic sense for them. it's not going to make economic sense. I was just talking to some people out of GTC where they all kind of need 2 or 3, kind of edge servers to run, kind of enterprise AI gatewaying, but they need it in 25 markets, connected with all the operational software, with all the transit capacity for DDoS, with all, it's just like really hard to do, but we can give that as an easy button. And so I think we'll monetize in a very unsexy part of the world called we'll deal with all the crap here, called getting the ports, getting the aggregation, putting the right thing in the right places, delivering it as an operational service, running the tidbits so you can get plus one more, edge inference node in 50 markets around the world to run your private network. Awesome. So that's how we plan to monetize it. And the who is really important, is because we're targeting this new wave of service providers, clouds. So instead of competing with, Vercel, I want to help Vercel win. Instead of competing with, AI company number 3 in the inference business for voice, I want to help them. I'm not trying to be in the voice inference business. I'm just trying to be in the infrastructure business, like a virtual co-location company with all the right places. So I think that's key to our business model, is focused on the providers, and those providers care enough about this software. We're not going to be able to do it in all the places they want to do it. Turns out they may be regulated in South Korea and have to do it in great, here's the software. Connect it to our big network in the places where it makes sense, but use this wherever you want. I'm not trying to compete because I'll never win in South Korea, where I don't have the telco license or whatever they create for the AI stuff. So I think that's our business model. It's niche. We're trying to build, it's a big business, but with a niche number of customers, because in the end, I think we got 100, 200, 500 service provider customers. We got a great business. We'll provide a lot of value in the world, is creating a couple hundred new clouds at scale. But if we were going after enterprise, I'd feel very different. But because we're targeting these service providers, I feel comfortable with this licensing model as being 100% open.
So thanks for explaining this. So to sum up to our audience, in plain English, you trying to spin out the open source company that actually helps to spin out the infrastructure and any type of infrastructure solution around the globe.
Yeah, primarily around connectivity and data, but exactly. We think that we can provide value doing picks and shovels. If you want to operate or control more of your own global edge network, we want to give you the superpowers to do so. That's not going to be because our software is so much better than some other software. It's going to be good. We're going to know it real well. We're going to run it really well. But you're going to pay us because we have the capacity and the infrastructure and the operational expertise to run that for you in a trusted manner, not because the widget on the metering for billing is good or bad. So I'm just going to give that away.
We should join.
Because who loves to pay for billing software?
Yeah, you basically make your own by the end of the day.
Everybody ends up doing that. So that's kind of why I said might as well just give it away. And maybe some of my service provider customers want to work on it with us. I want it to be as free and good as possible. I always said there's 3 things as a service provider you got to do. Usually, 1, people try and sell you shit, right? Sorry, is this G-rated? They try and sell you stuff.
Oh, good.
Yeah, which is please buy my things, right? The other one is there's an outage. It's broken, it's not working. And the third is you got a bill. By the way, you owe me money. And those 3 touch points are what most people, service providers, communicate with their customers around. Buy these things, it's broken, or here's you owe us money.
Yeah, and then they change the roadmap 180 degrees, and you oh, hold on, so I have to change the.
That's all about bucket number 1, which is called I'm trying to sell you something. And so I think if those touch points can become better, there'll be more service providers. So we built a system of action called Milo, which is all around knowing your customer in a cloud first, but on-prem world. users, organizations, permissions, quotas, related management, and also being able to monetize, meter, price book, etc. We're giving that away, right? Because I think that's a
Um,
huge part of being a service provider.
yeah. And actually, just a very loud note, and I think we should
Right.
think about this about this after webinar, because we just launched the dynamic risk profiling. Well, this definition only us internally understand, what it means. So,
The knobs.
so that means that actually we verify a lot of data sets
Yeah.
about the actual customer to understand what is their footprint in the internet.
Right.
So that actually, helped us to eliminate um, around 80% of abuse at IPXO, because
Interesting.
with who you are
Yeah.
dealing with, right?
Right. Yeah. What
And
what should this look like? Right. And who is this and what's their footprint and what should this look like? Right.
So I think that this type of thing, also should help, to service providers to kind of predict better on understanding who their customers are, because that's also, a part of a billing, like, for example, how many service providers verify that they
OFAC
allowed
compliance
to do
or
business with specific company.
yeah. Yeah, because they
None.
got OFAC or export
Zero.
controls. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
zero.
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's like one of the first things I built in our understanding of our customer onboarding, which is like we have to be able to, the second you want to pay us dollars, we need to know if you're OFAC compliant. And
Hmm.
it's only because I've grown
But it's
service
not even
providers.
OFAC. OFAC is just a small fraction
Just
of it.
one. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But look, I'm in the US, man. We just think about the US only. Don't worry about it.
Ah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's fine. But this is actually a really interesting area, which is like if we're going to say the world's going to get more complicated, right? Whether it's OFAC and export controls, whether it's like, hey, you're in the AI inference business for data with consumers, it's like fast forward 5 years, there are going to be a lot more rules, going to be a lot more complicated than GDPR, which is going to be like, hey, for French citizens, you can only use these, like keep the data within France or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
so this is going to get way more complicated. And I think that if we want to see a rich ecosystem of service providers, we're going to have to work together in the open using open source or open standards to, because like, are we
Hmm.
all going to have a lawyer in Belgium and also one in, Singapore to figure out the data privacy AI law for what happened this quarter so we can comply?
Hmm.
No. But you know who will? The hyperscaler will. And if that becomes the real definition of who succeeds because we have more lawyers or we have more, that's bad. So what we would
Hmm.
love to do is bring this consortium or ecosystem. This is what I was getting about, like a new Linux foundation for service providers, where we
Hmm.
can come together and be like, hey, we got needs. It's like the Better Business Bureau of the internet. I don't know if you
Yeah.
have that in Lithuania, but in America we have these Better Business Bureaus, which is like, I'm the restaurant and I'm the, like tailor shop, and we get together to clean up the streets and advocate on like, good signage and put it on the festival every, whatever weekend.
Yeah.
And I think we need something like that for the internet.
Hmm.
So we have some good
Absolutely.
examples with like Arin and the places that you play, which are consortium based, but like we need this to be a little bit more commercial around the businesses. And I don't think it can just be telcos. We got to get a way that these like newer businesses and service providers can join and participate.
Absolutely. And I actually posted an article on Circle ID about how internet sovereignty is reshaping company tech stack. And,
Mm.
my idea was that, you know, since we are in the age of deglobalization, let's face it, it's, the world is deglobalizing.
Right.
And, we have to understand the new order rules. And the same happens with open source as well, because, if we start from the basic things, like GDPR, then you have those AI acts, many things, yeah. And specifically for the countries, you also have the restrictions. And sometimes, if you would not understand those kind of acts or policies completely, you might actually, get into a trouble.
Right.
And here is with the open source the same, because one model does not fit them all. And you basically need to understand, if you apply open source to your business, that means you need to understand how it is compliant with the policies
Right.
around your customer base, around where your company is, etc., etc. So that's definitely a very important thing to consider. Moving forward, yeah. So actually, I think that we should join your GitHub as well to commit some of that data. We
I
we
would love
should
that.
we should actually. By the way, a question to you. So, open source, open source. A question to you. Like for example, when company mm, does crawl the internet and gets all that content stored inside their servers, is it their data?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I'm not a good, understander of what do they call it, free
Let me
use
explain you.
or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I know. I know that you don't have an answer, but this was like, a twist of a story
Right,
that I wanted
right.
to make.
This is the
So,
preamble to the question.
yeah. So basically, when we look at, the open source, and when we look at the information that is used for, I don't know, LMs, for exposing some sort of results, or on verifying some data sets, etc., etc. Let's take Google, for example. They've been scraping web for many, many, many years officially.
Yep.
And why they were doing this? Because of SEO. You can get your rankings and all that. And they had legitimacy to scrape you,
Right.
right? But, can we consider that this information is open source, or is it owned by Google? Like, is it their engine, the Google bot, that
I
does all
just
that
eyeballs.
crawling?
Yeah.
You know? Uh,
I mean, it's currently how the web has been built, right? And I'm very curious about the next wave of this, especially once we move away from pure advertising based models, right? Which are
oh,
not going to work for most people.
that's another
So
big topic. That's another big topic, because I think that banner systems and the whole banner advertisement systems will
yeah,
be gone, because
yeah, we got
content will be a value
yeah.
that actually everyone is after. So, coming back to open source. Um, okay, you say that open source is the golden age of open source.
Yep.
Um, but are we think about the same open source model as we used to have, 10 years ago, when
I
we
think we
had
have
those?
to. I think we have to rethink it. I think we have to understand what are the licensing. What's the point? What are we trying to accomplish?
Let's talk
Um,
about this. Let's talk
yeah.
about this.
Mhm.
This is the interesting part, because, when you think about open source, and then when you talk with many, like, open source project maintainers, they like understand still the same mentality, you know but what has to change, Zach, in your view?
Well, I think that we will have to come up with different licensing, right? If the value has moved. I'm not exactly, I haven't like given a ton of thought to how, but I just can't imagine we had a huge licensing shift with SaaS. We're going to have a very big licensing shift with AI. Um, and, uh, And then I think we need to understand what our consortiums look like. What's the commercial model like? Where's software, in the value chain? And how do we care about it? And so, will we need to work on software only? Is it going to be mainly about data exchanges? Is it going to be specifications and agreement on standards? Are we going to mainly try and work on complications of policies and rules? Like that OFAC/export control rule. Like, wouldn't it be better if we all had like a super great way where that was all open and was all kept up to date and the whole world participated, kind of like the phone system where we knew that if we dialed this number, like it would go to that country, like, and everybody kind of like obeyed to the standard, like that'd be cool. Like, we need, maybe it's more ITF work than it is just software, because the software maybe is just implementing a spec. Well, then maybe we should spend more time on the spec, right? That's what's going to matter more. And so I love, like, Linux Foundation does have two things, both the joint development model and the community specification project, which are ways to agree on specifications, not on software, right? And like, how do you have a licensing agreement where you're contributing to a spec like USB? Right now those are done through consortiums that are quite enclosed, because there's all kinds of legal ramifications of like, did I give you my secret sauce, or did I infect a patent or something on some design that would have occurred? Oh, but I need all the industry to participate, so it has to be safe for everybody. Like, this is the type of thing I think we might find more value out of versus just like the software, which is like, I don't know, just recreate the software from the spec.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's not the hard part. But the value of like diverse groups coming together to agree on things, debate through. We've luckily had this amazing kind of Git revision with commit. Like, it's not all egalitarian, but like, we have transparent, good organizing structures that allow us to participate with diverse people, from individuals to bigger companies. Now, obviously, you still have to have governance and who can control commit and things like that. But wow, we've had a lot of benefit. I think we're going to need to rethink some of those organizing structures in this new wave.
So, Zach, practical question.
Yeah.
The guys who actually are very excited about open source and want to develop something.
Everybody at KubeCon this week in Amsterdam, right? That's who we're talking about?
No. My question is, what should we do considering about open source and building their business around that model?
Well, I don't think you can walk blindly into that. I think you have to ask the question first and foremost, like, how am I going to monetize? And do I feel really good about being in the open ecosystem around this? Maybe you're saying, like, Datum made this choice because we said, hey, the models are going to learn open source software very quickly. I want to make sure my entire company is open. Our handbook is open. How you apply for jobs, how we do everything is open. Why? Because I want it as a marketing play. I want the models to learn all that stuff. So when you're thinking about how do I build a new network in 2026, I want the models to know Datum better than anything else. This is the new SEO, right? So like, learn everything. So for me, I'm going to get value out of that no matter what. I'm committed to it. It's actually part of my strategy. I think that's like somebody who's developing a company needs to think, do I want an open company or do I want a closed company? And if you want an open company, I think you're going to have to put out stuff out there, because models are going to be a real big part of how people adopt. I don't think it's all going to be, I read your blog post and then went to like Hacker News and then like went over to, some technical coding blog to figure out how to use your API. I don't know. I think probably going to be like, well, we better teach Gemini and Anthropic how to use Datum. So we better get out there and be open. Maybe they're going to have a different way to do it. But like, I would ask myself that question. What's my business model? If software is free, whether it's proprietary or open, what is my business model? And decide on that first.
We should definitely set the the expectations. How open?
Well, right now, there's not a lot of gray area. It's kind of like it's open or it's not. And whether you think you have a permissive license or a restrictive license, I think is all about how you're going to go defend it. And, so to me, I think it's really more of a binary question of open or not open. And then
Hmm.
everything after that is just your business plan. What are you doing it for?
Hmm. So, give
It
me.
better not be because like I'm going to write open software. I think that that's going to be a really, really bad business model.
Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? And by the way, thanks, Zach. It's really helpful, and I think that
I love
it's
chatting about this stuff.
absolutely me too. And I hope that audience was also listening excitedly about all the bits and pieces that you shared during our conversation. Uh,
Ramblings of two old hosting guys just trying to figure out their way in the world.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is how we roll, right?
That's how we got.
So, do we have any questions from the audience? Let me check. Let me check. Okay, so we don't have any questions because it was very, very clear, crystal clear. My today's speaker speaks crystal clear messages. Awesome. So, give us some, I don't know, happy or unhappy message. What is for the future?
Well, I'm bullish on an open future. I think it's going to create a better world. I think when the internet and the ability for more people to participate in it versus just a couple of big companies, I think that's way more interesting for our planet. So I'm excited about that for businesses who can compete on global scale because this normalizes a lot of the playing field. There's entirely new ways and architectures coming around that help people gain a competitive edge, and that this will provide more voices in building the next wave of how we use technology as society. So I'm super optimistic, but like my wife would tell me that I'm always optimistic. Like, so that maybe you have to take that with a grain of salt. But, you know, it doesn't come for free. So just like, in the early days of the internet, we had to get together and connect networks and build relationships. And we still do that. You still have to get together with people and figure out what are you trying to do? It can't just be all me. And so I'd encourage, I've run into some startups recently and they are just not wanting to share. They don't want to spend any time engaging and building relationships. They want to just like, I gotta go fast and win. I'm like, maybe, right? But I think that there's more of a community that needs to be built, and we are better together, learning from each other, working on problems together, trying to figure out how this can be a positive part of our, both business and society. And so I would say take the blinders off a little bit, be willing to invest 20% of your vibe coding times doing stuff to build a better internet. And if you can do that, that's going to result in good things for you and your company and your shareholders.
Mm, yeah, I think that we definitely I see several pillars here. First of all, the generation change, the stack change, and all those two combined is a mindset change.
Yeah.
So I think that those three things definitely will influence how the whole technology will evolve, and how open it will be.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, because yeah, I agree with you. I also had chats from time to time with startups, and I see that they are reluctant to say something that they do. But hey, perhaps we can solve those problems together.
Together.
You don't have to kind of struggle, alone. let's
Right.
let's struggle together, and
Together.
let's yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
but we will see what will happen. Interesting times we are living at, and look, thanks a lot for today's conversation. It was super awesome.
Really
um
appreciate you having me to talk about this, and appreciate you putting on something where we can stretch and then just talk about the tactical, got to think a little bit about how's this all going to work? How could it work? So appreciate the chance to dream a little bit. Use
Hey, the
my
pleasure is
left
all
brain
mine.
artistic.
The pleasure is all mine. I mean, it's always good to chat with you online, offline, in any format.
Amazing.
And
All right,
and
Vincentus.
yeah, thanks a lot, Zach. Thanks a lot. Thank you, our dearest audience. Today we had a very good conversation about, is open source dead? Well, apparently it's not dead, you
It's
know.
not dead. It's just changing, man.
So yeah, stay tuned for our next webinars, and you're gonna see a lot of amazing new speakers coming out. I'm actually preparing a very interesting webinar about IP addressing in space, in constellation.
Almost as good as time in space. Could you do an episode on time?
Time? Yeah, actually, I can.
What is the time zone in Mars?
Mm.
Mm.
No, you know, actually, it would be interesting to talk about atomic clock, and I know with who I could engage to talk about it.
Yeah, there's some great folks at the NTP Network Time
Net not,
organization.
net not from
Yeah,
Sweden.
and it's a fascinating topic, especially as you start thinking time is just, we have Earth time, and we struggle with Earth time, and just start to put into that a little three-dimensional space. Man, it gets pretty weird. Wait, but it's like around the moon or the sun, or how many moons and suns do
Yeah.
we? Oh, the watch is not working.
Okay, guys,
All
thanks a
right,
lot.
bye.
It was Zach Smith with me, and stay tuned. Thank you very much. Bye
Ciao.
now.